Good evening. I'd like to call to order this regular meeting of the Forest Hills Board of Education, June 25th, 2018, 7 p.m. Mr. Giuffre, would you please call roll?
Mrs. Barber?
Here.
Ms. Choice? Here. Dr. Heiss? Mr. Smith?
Here.
Mr. Fruman?
Here. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You've got exits both corners as well as over here and over there. Please take note of those.
I have a question.
Can I have a motion to adopt the agenda, please?
A second.
How about a first?
Oh.
So moved.
See? I told you.
So moved.
Oh, geez.
Would you like to second?
Sure, I second.
Mr. Giuffre?
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mrs. Barber?
Yes.
Ms. Choice?
Yes.
And Mr. Fruman?
Yes. Item 3, approval of various minutes, the 3.1 through 3.4. First, the approval of the minutes of the Policy Committee of May 2nd, 2018.
Can we take them all together?
We can, if I can get a motion.
Okay. I move we approve the minutes of the Policy Committee meeting, the special board meeting, the Business Advisory Committee, and the previous regular meeting of May 21st.
Second.
Good job.
Mr. Giuffre?
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Ms. Choice?
Yes.
Mrs. Barber?
Yes.
And Mr. Fruman?
Yes. Item 4.1, correspondence. Mr. Prebles?
I have none this evening, sir.
Mr. Giuffre, any correspondence?
None, thank you.
I will note that we continue to receive a good number of correspondence and emails regarding the Anderson High School nickname and logo. We've read them, and we appreciate the continued input. Item 4.2 is the procedure for public commentary. This meeting is a meeting of the Board of Education in public for the purpose of conducting the school district's business. It is not to be considered a public meeting. There is a time for public participation during the meeting as indicated in the agenda under public commentary. Individuals who like to share their opinions should fill out a sheet up front and turn it in. I will tell you, as we have in prior meetings, we're going to limit public commentary to 30 minutes, 2 minutes each. That means I don't have time for more than 15, and I already have more than 15 sheets. We'll take them in the order that we were presented. I apologize if you didn't make the cut. And when we do get to the public commentary, I will strictly enforce the 2 minutes. As I have in the past, I apologize in advance. I'm not trying to be rude. I'm merely trying to keep the meeting going. Item 5.1.7, Sigma Robotics presentation.
President Fruman, members of the board, 7 Sigma Robotics completed its 3rd year of competition and competed in a tournament in Scranton, Pennsylvania in March that qualified them for World Championship at the end of April, where they placed 8th overall. They were also recognized for their efforts to create awareness and spread excitement for STEM and robotics in their schools and community. The team has been busy with efforts in our elementary schools as well. They received a grant from Forest Hills Foundation for Education in which they developed and implemented an after-school program at Wilson Elementary with support from Mr. Buck, the principal, Mr. Samuels, the media specialist. The team is comprised of students from the Anderson Township area at the following schools. From Turpin High School, Austin Moats, John Mays, Jackson Todd, and Andrew Moats. At Anderson High School, Tassos Manganeras, Seven Hills, Nick Norton, and Summit Country Day, Jack Crane. And this evening, 7 Sigma Robotics is here to present to the school board and those present some of the many things that they do. So we're very happy to have you with us, gentlemen, and take it from here. Thank you.
Hold on, before they get started, is it too difficult to move the podium? Because I don't think we can see. I'm not asking you.
We'll do that.
Can we?
Hello. First of all, thank you for having us here. And second, we are Team 10030, 7 Sigma Robotics. We are a community-based team here in Anderson Township, and we operate out of a few members' basement. So we belong to an international nonprofit named FIRST, which stands for Inspiration and Recognition in Science and Technology. FIRST runs and supports 4 separate robotics leagues ranging in complexity and age range. We belong to the league FTC, which stands for First Tech Challenge. FTC is comprised of 2 main areas. First of all, there's the robotics competition, in which the robots compete on the field against each other, performing different tasks. And the second part is the tertiary area, which puts a lot of emphasis on outreach and community service such as this. And it involves a presentation to a panel of judges, as well as a very in-depth and detailed engineering notebook, primarily authored by the team.
As John mentioned, a large part of the game is outreach, and that's basically where you go out into your community and promote STEM and robotics. So this year we decided to focus most of our outreach on Forest Hills School District and trying to create more robotics programs within Forest Hills. And we started by trying to spread awareness by giving presentations at several of the elementary schools. We thought the best way to get kids really interested would be to give them a hands-on experience. So we developed our own after-school club for elementary schoolers as 6th graders. It was an 8-week after-school club designed to be held at one of the elementary schools. And we wrote a grant to fund this club, which was successfully funded by the Forest Hills Foundation for Education. So we held this club at Wilson Elementary School a couple months ago in January and February, and the success has been tremendous. We've had several of the kids express interest to continue pursuing STEM, and we even had several kids approach us about starting their own FTC team like our own. In order to keep this club going once we all graduate, we're working to have a professional development session this summer with teachers within the school district to train them on how they can run the club themselves after we've all graduated.
So the other part of the competition that John mentioned was the robot competition. Every year there's a similar layout to the competition where there's a 30-second pre-programmed autonomous period followed by a 2-minute driver-controlled period. We've brought a bit of a watered-down version over here to demonstrate to you guys, but we have the 2 highest scoring potential elements of the game for this year. I guess I can have someone demonstrate over there. So basically, there's these cubes, which are very important. We take these, collect them, and dispense them into this box over here. Your goal being to fill it up as much as you can, and if you fill the entire thing, the reason that they're different colors is so that you can form certain patterns to provide even more points. And then we also have this little yellow guy over here. And your goal is to take him and place him outside of the field a couple feet over the field walls and place him standing up for even more. So that's this year's competition, which is different every year.
So this season was one of our most successful yet, placing 8th in the world at the World Championships in Detroit, as well as competing in 6 other competitions where we've placed highly not only in robot performance but in the awards category.
So this year we sought out to learn more than ever before on the robot build and design front. And to do this, we utilize computer-aided design, specifically with a program called PTC Creo. And we modeled our entire robot in CAD. And what this allowed us to do is see tolerances and how different parts of the robot would interact with each other before we even built it. And then once we had this done and we had a robot that we felt would be most likely to work during the competition, we sent it off to our sponsors in typical engineering file formats such as DXF so that they could CNC punch it for us. And then we got these parts back from them a couple weeks later and put the robot together, and it all fit together just like how it was modeled on the computer. And we learned a lot from this, specifically on how to take something from start to finish with a project. And it really was rewarding in the fact that this weekend we placed 3rd in robot competition, but we also were awarded an award for industrial design and received $500 for that.
And of course, in addition, to make our robot come to life, we of course have to implement a great deal of software into the whole package. And to this end, we have pursued especially ambitious efforts, and of these, the most ambitious was likely our computer vision pursuit. Of course, many of you have heard of autonomous cars, and computer vision is a extremely related and cutting-edge software that many people don't get to interact with until years into their career. And without this opportunity, I wouldn't have been able to interact with this technology for many years, I'm sure. In this effort, I am able to complete the autonomous portion that was mentioned earlier to an extremely high degree of accuracy and consistency.
And I would like to demonstrate to you a robot.
Can you see? Elizabeth, can you see?
Test. Test.
And we control it wirelessly with those two dots communicate with each other.
So the basic design concept of our robot is that blocks come in the front where the wheel collectors are, and we have 4 points of contact here that when we collect the block, we're able to orient it before it comes into the robot. And what you're seeing right now is unfortunately some blocks are able to come up. There's a chamfered edge on our bucket, and blocks are occasionally able to pop up onto that chamfered edge and then become sort of lodged into the robot. But we're usually able to evacuate them within about 10 seconds. So, as you're seeing, what they just started to do is build what's called a cipher. So in the competition, you can see there's 2 different colored blocks. So there's the gray kind and then the brown kind. And you have to arrange these into different patterns in more points. So there's 3 different patterns that you're able to do. And the one right now that they're building looks like a line going from the bottom right of the box up to the top left. And this will give you about 30 points more in each competition. And there are in total 4 of these boxes on the field, 1 for each robot. And there are 2 robots competing on an alliance. So you have a partner in each match where you can score points with and split up the different game patterns.
So to clarify, in the actual match, it's on a 12-foot by 12-foot square field with these chain foam tiles. Just for what we say we go out smaller with the shape. What's the quarter of the actual field?
So one thing that's a little bit difficult is, of course, not everything works all the time. So we're actually having a little bit of issues collecting blocks. So in order to raise it up, we actually need to move all the blocks we situated all the way back in our hopper in order to raise it up.
Is this your own design, the whole project?
Yeah.
Your own design from the ground up?
So at the start of the season, we get a game video where it outlines what the competition is and what avenues you can use to score points. So then you have to build a whole design for the robot to be able to accomplish these tasks, and then also be able to do it the most quickly. Score the most points in the least amount of time in the competition.
We're demonstrating here an especially long arm, even in terms of the criteria of our competition. This is about a few inches under 8 feet, which allows us to be especially versatile when it comes to
Where do you get the parts to build that?
So as Austin mentioned, we design a lot of it in CAD, which is basically a software on the computer. There's many of them, but we use PTT Creo. And what we do is we actually have sponsors that fabricate parts for us. So we send them a file and they stamp it out in aluminum parts and we can assemble it.
So there's an option of using, like, there's companies that make kits that are similar to like a super example, but with metal, so that you can make a more durable robot. But we have most of our parts custom made, so while we don't usually rely on kits, that's available for any team.
You write your own stuff?
Yeah, we write all.
Any more questions?
Sigma 74 is that these young men have come into our elementary schools to say, Bob, they are providing our younger students experiences with this type of technology, with this type of learning, which is very closely related to our facility upgrades and the many things that we're doing within our classrooms to upgrade learning spaces for students and the use of our learning commons in our schools to try to incorporate STEM and technology into everything that we do. So this is education in the 21st century. It has dramatically changed our classrooms. It has offered different types of necessities, skill sets that students need to have, creative thinking, problem solving, the opportunity to work together, to collaborate, to be able to communicate as well as these young men did this evening to describe what they're doing. So what they're doing is solving problems these days, not just answering questions. And this is precisely what we learn from our business world, from colleges, and from institutions that our students attend after Forest Hill. That the skill sets that they are using here are very much necessary in society. And we are so thankful that you would be able to come again this evening to share this with us. We're extremely proud of you, and we're excited about the possibilities that your work has offered our students. So thank you very much, and good luck.
Thank you, guys. That was really great. Item 6.1, candidates for graduation. Mr. Fellows.
Test. Can everyone hear?
I'll speak really loud and in the mic. How about that? Very good? All right. Well, and for those who didn't hear what they were saying, I've seen the presentation before. Really cool stuff, as Mr. Prebles was saying. And hi, Jaden, are you filming me right now? Okay. Very cool stuff. And one of the things that all these creative opportunities for them to kind of experience and explore in ingenuity, and then all the public speaking opportunities that they have had. And they get ready for it, as they said eloquently at the beginning, in their parents' basement, right? So we're going to celebrate the continuation and the fulfillment of these students' progress, and a couple students reaching the end of high school, hopefully getting out of their students' basement and moving on to bigger and better, or their parents' basement, and moving on to bigger and better things. And I could not be more proud as the principal of Anderson High School. You know, a lot of people don't realize that while we have an incredible graduation rate in this district, and majority of our students graduate in May, we have students that finish up at various times throughout the school year. And every time that they do, it is no less exciting, and it is no less of a proud moment for our teachers, our counselors who are here, the parents that are seated in the room, friends that came out to congratulate these two amazing students. So at this time, I'll introduce these two great kids. The following students have completed all requirements for a diploma from Anderson High School. And let me pull that back up because this just went kaput. Kara Cheyenne Gilman and Jacob Andrew Yeager. And great students. They had an opportunity to finish, and actually they, after all of their peers had finished up, they spent countless hours working late into the evening, really trying to finish things up when it could have been easy to throw in the towel, and they just didn't. And to me, that shows incredible grit and determination. It's really what we're about, is finishing strong, and it's not always about when you finish, it's that you finish. And so we are all excited to celebrate with you all today and offering this diploma. So the superintendent recommends the board approve the granting of a high school diploma to Kara Gilman and Jacob Yeager.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the granting of a high school diploma to Kara Gilman and Jacob Yeager.
A second.
Mr. Giuffre.
Mrs. Barber.
Yes.
Ms. Choice?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
And Mr. Fruben?
Yes. Congratulations. Are the parents of Kara and Jacob here? If we could ask you to stand, we give you a round of applause too. Thank you all. You all are welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting, but it's certainly not required. You can leave too.
Not a big deal.
Item 7.1 is the Anderson High School Branding and Mascot Committee report. As the chair of that committee, I'll provide that report. The Board of Education previously included within its February 15th, 2018 work session an indication that we are going to address the nickname and logo at Anderson High School. A committee was formed. It was in place by March 6th of 2018. We had 4 meetings, April 2nd, April 16th, April 30th, and June 12th. We received really countless communications, lots of information on both sides of the issue. It was debated and discussed extensively. And at the last meeting on June 12th of 2018, the committee was unable to reach a consensus and makes no recommendation. Because there's no recommendation, there's no action to be taken by the board, and I thank the committee members for their work.
Mr. Fruben, before you move on, was there any more action on this item?
There was not any action on this item at all.
I'd like to take just a moment and thank you for your work as chair of the committee. This was clearly a stressful, emotional, and very polarizing topic. And I just want to thank you for the incredible amount of time you spent on this, your professionalism, and your patience, and importantly, your consistency. I really appreciate, and I'm sure the entire committee and community appreciates the difficult job and the fact that people may not know this, but for every email we got, our practice is that the president of the board is the person who responds when the email goes to the entire board. Mr. Fruben, I believe, responded to every one of the hundreds that we received. So I simply wanted to say thank you.
Thank you. No thanks is really necessary. It's what we try to do. Did anyone else have anything they wanted to discuss on this issue? Ms. Joyce, you wanted
Yes, I would just like to thank the entire committee for your hard work, your passion, your dedication, and the time that you put in, because I know it took a lot of time. It's unfortunate that the committee could not come to a consensus. It's also unfortunate that the term Redskins has been normalized. The majority didn't find it offensive, but we all care. We all care about our children. We all care about our students. For me, it's about every child, every single day. And so no child should have to feel uncomfortable or offended when they walk into their school. And no parent should have to worry about their child being felt or feeling uncomfortable and offended when their child goes to school. So we have to choose to do the right thing, which is sometimes not the easy thing. And so it's my hope that we will come to some type of a plan or something where we can all agree to it. But it's so important that our children, every single child, every single day, walks into our school buildings with pride. And that's what we want for them.
Thank you. That was great. So my comments were going to be somewhat along the lines of that. Just that this was hard on everyone. It was hard on the community. It was hard on us. And I think the fortunate place about where we are right now is that it's time to heal. It's now time to, we know how everyone feels, and as leaders, it's our job to help heal that. And one of the board priorities is to, and I will quote it, protect a safe, secure, and inclusive culture for our students. And that is ultimately why we brought this to the table, because that is a priority for us. So while this is the end of the logo discussion for now, it is not the end at all of working toward a healthy culture. It's just the beginning. And I was going to have almost an exact comment as you, that all students have a right to be proud of Anderson High School, and the truth is we have some now who are not. So that's going to mean looking at things like making sure we have spirit wear that is how it needs to be for everyone. I think it's going to need looking at uniforms. That's not going to be something that the board's going to do, but Jim, I wanted you to make some comments on this committee, the Inclusion Diversity Committee thing. But this is just the beginning of the conversation, and I'll finish by saying I was both discouraged and encouraged by the last meeting. It was hard to watch the emotion, but at the same time, once you know what you're working, you know how to heal it. And I think we are there. So I would just encourage you all to open your minds and be willing to move to the next place.
Thank you, both Dee Dee and Elizabeth. I was going to bring this up during board discussion, but since you drew attention to it now, Elizabeth, I'll mention it now. We already have a committee. It's called CARE, which stands for Competence, Advocacy, Responsivity, Empowerment, and it's part of our strategic vision. And I quote, "We will engage a district-level committee to help establish site and district-wide guiding principles, a program assessment tool that supports guiding principles, and ways to overcome institutional barriers that limit access and equality." And while the branding and logo was one of the things we made as part of our board priorities on February 15th of this year, another thing that we made a board priority was cultural awareness and diversity. And I think a step towards that is, I think, board involvement in the CARE committee, and I've asked Ms. Choice if she will take an active role on that committee, and she's agreed to do so. So Dee Dee, if you will reach out to Mr. Prebles and become actively engaged in that committee, I would appreciate it. Any other further discussion on this? All right, then we're moving on to public. Ma'am. This isn't the time for public commentary. We have a time, and if you've signed up and you get to, you can speak. I appreciate that. If we're going to have interruptions, I'm going to have to ask you to be removed. All right, we're going to move on to public commentary. Item 8.1, as previously indicated, I'm going to limit to 30 minutes. I've got time for 15. I'll strictly enforce the time. Our first speaker is Doug Millman.
Just make sure the speakers are working so that people can hear you. Or the microphone.
Can you hear me? Thank you for making this decision to keep our history intact, at least for now. A couple of you really stepped up, and that took guts, and I thank you very, very much. There's no mascot. There isn't a mascot. The mascot was a human being dressed as an Indian running around the football field. He's gone. It's been gone since '03. It's a non-issue. That's a buzzword, and that's irrelevant to us now. So why are you here? You're here to change and divide our community. You want us to think and see things as you do. If we resist, you're told we're wrong and even racist. We accepted this challenge from you and researched, talked to many, many Native Americans, and guess what we found out? There's no racism. There's no mascot. We proved it beyond a shadow of a doubt. Be quiet, I'm speaking. If you were truly intellectually honest, you would find these facts and you would come to the same conclusions we did. No mascot, no racism, so why are you here? You're here. I've been watching you since I was 21 years old. You answer to Russell, Ray, big old George, Barry, Dennis, Clyde. They all say jump, you say how high. I'm tired of it. I personally believe most of you don't even know why you're here. So what's left? You're offended. The facts are all there for you to go learn, just like you tell us. It's time for you to change. Remember, you're unwarranted, prejudiced. It can be unlearned. It can be unlearned. Maybe someday, if you study the facts, you'll come back to this community and apologize to us for being invasive, offensive, and insensitive to us and to this community.
Amy Lance.
Hi, my name is Amy Lance, and I'm standing before you tonight as an Anderson graduate, a Forest Hills resident, and a mother. I am a second-generation graduate of Anderson High School. My husband fought for our country, serving multiple tours overseas, all while we uprooted our family every couple of years to relocate to where he was needed. It was good to get away from the Anderson Township bubble, both in college and as a military spouse, and expand my worldview, but once he was done, all I wanted was to come back and raise our kids in this school district. After 15 years away, 4.5 years ago, we returned to root our 5, soon-to-be 6 children in the place I've always called home and receive the excellent education I knew they could get here. Sorry. I can relate on some level to the deep ties to the name and logo held by some in our community. I wore the name and image on uniforms and spirit wear representing our school without much thought until the idea of change first surfaced my senior year. At the time, it represented pride in our community, our school, and our student body. We've never been a very diverse community, so I understand why it's hard for some to recognize, having to look past the pride held for and the good memories of the alma mater of many in this room. It makes me sad to see so many in our community threaten to vote against school funding if Mascot has changed and refuse to grow. I'm sure change was hard for many at the end of slavery, for those that saw the integration of schools, differently abled children being granted an education instead of hidden away in institutions, and one I know some are still working on, accepting the idea that people are people no matter how they identify or who they love. I would hope most agree it's wrong to discriminate based on race, religion, or identification. So why is it still okay to degrade with a racial slur representing our community? That healing that was mentioned can't happen with a racial slur still representing our school. Time to change.
Jamie Castle.
My name's Jamie Castle. I was a 1990 grad at Miami University. I'm now president of the Heritage Church here in Henderson. When they changed their name, they only listened to the voice that mattered. It was the Native Americans.
Like I said, there is no voice on this board. There's no Native person. There's no Native person on the committee. We don't have a voice. Isn't this about us? Isn't this about us? Redskins is a slur, racial slur. It means scalps, bloody skins stripped from Native bodies. Sold for bounty. Sold for bounty. That was my people. This is native land. This building is on native land. And the only reason there's no natives here in large numbers is because we were slaughtered, poisoned, and ran off at gunpoint. At gunpoint. And now we have people making a decision on a civil rights issue. This is a human rights and a civil rights issue. You can't vote on it. You can't survey it. You can't poll it. You can't make a decision. I'm sorry. I know you're the majority, but the majority should not rule in a civil rights and human rights issue.
Louise Loire.
Good evening. At the February meeting of the school board of the Board of Education, in announcing that there would be a committee to examine the logo at Anderson High School, Mr. Fruman said unequivocally that this matter would not be decided by majority rule or the number of letters. He said that it would be made by asking what is best for Anderson High School students and their education. In addition, in the Diversity Audit Report of 2004, Dr. Terrell recommended that the district continue to explore the Mascot logo issue, noting that it is clearly an issue related to diversity sensitivity. Those three focuses, students, their education, and diversity sensitivity, should have been the primary focuses that the committee examined. To do so, it would have been appropriate to have a person of color on the committee, have a representative of the Forest Hills diversity team on the committee, include on the committee or interview the Native American family with children in the district who have expressed how the logo has negatively impacted them. Review and evaluate the logo in light of the 40 developmental assets or whatever current tool is being used, which includes specific assets for both minority and majority students regarding positive attitudes, social competency, and positive identity. Review and apply to decision-making the diversity audit by Dr. Terrell with a focus on cultural competence, and conduct rigorous research and evaluate reports, data, surveys, and sources with academic rigor, giving greater weight to peer-reviewed and verifiably professional sources. None of these steps, however, was addressed in a meaningful way by anyone on the committee. There was no exploration of the impact of the logo on the well-being of all students. There was also no discussion about whether the logo is counter to other stated values for education. There was no evident mention of cultural competency, cultural, healthy learning environments, the values of respect and compassion, or healthy self-identity. These educational values are essential for all students. In addition, there was an appalling lack of attention or compassion afforded the family.
Thank you, Ms. Loire. Kelly Holterhoff.
With no rigorous analysis of the materials presented, the committee assessed documents from the United States Department of Education, the National Museum of the American Indian, the American Psychological Association, and the National Indian Education Association, the National Congress of American Indians, and peer-reviewed research with less weight than a refuted Washington Post survey and less substantial materials. It seems, therefore, that any outcome of the AHS Branding and Mascot Committee is irrelevant because it did not take steps to address its stated intent, the well-being of the students and their education. Since there was no clear direction about the pending decision regarding branding, the newly renovated Anderson High School building, and since all the committee members, several of the Board of Education members on the committee, mentioned that they believe the mascot and logo will be changed in the future, we demand that no taxpayer money be spent to paint, imprint, or in any way place the logo or mascot on the property, uniforms, letterhead, or other location at Anderson High School. To do so would be a waste of taxpayer money because it will have to be changed, whether from good decision-making or from outside pressure in the near future. We request that the Forest Hills Board of Education review and pass the following resolution to guarantee that no taxpayer money be spent on branding the newly renovated building or any part of Anderson High School. Thank you.
Rory Sheridan.
Hi, my name is Rory Sheridan, class of 2000. Captain America, when asked why he chose to join the military, said, "I don't like bullies. I don't like bullies either. If you're a teacher of a class of 25 people and 24 of those students think it's a good idea to call that other person a name, that doesn't make it okay." A lot of polls are cited stating the term redskin isn't offensive to Native people, but none of these polls show that 100% of Native peoples are in support of the term. Human rights isn't a referendum issue. Human dignity isn't something which a poll can be dispositive of. The Native people of this country have suffered the indignities of dislocation, dehumanization, and objectification. You find some reclaiming the word as a source of pride. This has been the case with pejorative labels throughout the course of history, throughout the history of marginalized people. It's an effort to take back the term on their own terms. Sticks and stones may break my bones doesn't give you a license to throw sticks and stones. It's the ethic of reciprocity, the golden rule. Their acceptance of the term, if at all, is a turning of the cheek. We should do better. The term is offensive in every dictionary. There's a concept in law called a per se violation or a strict liability. The intent doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that the memories you made on Forest Road are somehow on the line to you. Captain America also said something else. He said it doesn't matter if the whole country decides that something wrong is something right. When the mob and the press and the whole world tell you to move, your job is to plant yourself like a tree beside the river of truth and tell the world no.
Sheridan,
you move!
Les Tacey. Les Tacey.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for letting us speak this evening. Last week I emailed the board stating that, in my opinion, now is actually the best time from a cost perspective to fund this change. I pointed out that if you use today's dollars, it'll be cheaper than future dollars, and that if we had made the change back in '99 and 2003, the cost would have been substantially cheaper then as well. In addition to these points, I have noticed that according to the Forest Hills 5-year forecast, the balance in the cash was $19 million at the beginning of the 17-18 fiscal school year, and is projected to be nearly $16 million at the end of the fiscal year, which is coming up in June 30th. Your 5-year forecast also shows an expected cash balance of over $10 million, near $11 million, by the end of the next school year. With this in mind, it is clear the money is available to pay for this change. And as I argued in my email, using current costs will save the district from higher costs down the road. Now, the board can still choose, if it so chooses, to act on this matter at hand, despite the fact that the committee did not come up with a recommendation. And as stewards of our taxpayer dollars, it would be best to do this now, making the conversion during the 18-19 school year and not some future school year. Thank you.
Skylar Falcons.
Hello, my name is Skylar, and as some of you already know, I'm a member of Anderson's class of 2011. However, some of you might not know that along with graduating from here, I was also section leader in the band, vice president of women's chorus, sang in a cappella, was a member of the academic team, performed in many musicals, and even sang a duet at my graduation, all the while keeping straight A's and earning a place in the top 10 juniors for academics. I say this to you because I am not an outsider. I have not deserted Anderson. I went to my 5-year reunion. I went to my alumni marching band night, and I keep in contact with many teachers through Facebook. I have pride in my school, and because we are all here tonight, everyone here, we all love our school, and I think that's amazing. But having pride in our school does not need to be misplaced in a word or a logo. This issue goes beyond school pride. It also goes beyond these doors. Our entire community has been affected by this controversy, and in my opinion, I don't see that going away anytime soon. However, we do have an exit strategy. Members of the board, I ask you, let us not continue this cycle of conflict, but take steps to resolve it. Like the community said, the biggest problem is the funding, but this problem will continue unless we do something about it now. If we take the logo off uniforms or other equipment, then it will be less costly just when next we need the equipment, or even just put the logo on less costly items or equipment that's most frequently bought. This would hopefully eliminate one of the obstacles that you as the board would have in making a fair and just decision on the logo without outside factors. Thank you for allowing the chance for me to talk, and I hope you have a good night. We are all wonderful people here. I wish we didn't have to be separated by this. So thank you all for being here tonight.
Tina Harold.
After the positive intent at the start of the Mascot and Branding Committee, it was embarrassing to see the process devolve into the mob-like one-sided melee at the final meeting. This was not supposed to be a popularity contest, but a thoughtful attempt to study the issue and determine the best policy for the future of our students in school. Those of us in favor of changing the mascot focused on child development issues, demonstrating that many Native Americans are offended, refuting the well-known but flawed polls, and developing funding and rebranding ideas. We didn't focus on recruiting an angry, screaming mob of 50 or so people enticed by free gift cards and t-shirts in order to harass committee members and disrupt meetings. A couple of the committee members even pointed to the aggressive and abhorrent behavior of the Keeper group as a reason why they couldn't agree to change the logo, bolstering the mob-like atmosphere. Shockingly, the outcome appeared to have been influenced by the crowd's aggressive conduct, where members were shouted down, called names, called liars, members stood up and begged not to be booed and not to be yelled and screamed at. The committee had the opportunity and the responsibility to do the right thing. They appeared to agree it is wrong to name a new school with the current pejorative. So obviously there was no question about the negative aspect of the mascot name. Rather than using peer-reviewed child development data, which demonstrates the damage done by stereotyping and negative slurs to all children, especially when encouraged by the school, they appear to defer to a small fringe group of questionable intent and bias. Members ignored the flaws of a few polls, but also chose to ignore a poll where 67% of Native people were offended by the name. The committee's duty was not to teach students how many Native Americans you can get away with offending. Using the uniform cost from West Claremont, which is more than twice the student population, and other discrepancies may have grossly inflated the estimate. Hopefully the school board will do the fiscally responsible thing and request the logo not be used on newly purchased equipment, uniforms, on any school property, and there should be alternatives.
Thank you, Ms. Harold.
For children who don't want to wear
Thank you. Baron Scott.
Dee Dee, this is for you. My child has been called stupid, dumb, ignorant, turd, among other words. These words are all offensive, I'm sure, to everybody here in this room. How many times a day do you yourselves use the word stupid, or dumb, or ignorant, referring to an action or another person? However, these words are also in our dictionary. You're not going to ask the community or the dictionary to remove these words, are you? Certainly doubt it. Every person in this room can be offended by anything. Bees, Mustangs, Wildcats, Eagles, Archers, Falcons, Spartans, Nighthawks. They could be offensive to any person in this room or any other person in the community. The Logo Branding Committee should have recommended tonight not to change the name of our beloved Redskins. I'm asking this board to take it a step further. I want this board to draw a line now and forever state that the Forest Hill School District will never again address this issue. I want this board to state unequivocally that they are proud of their Anderson Redskins, proud of the rich history of the many students, faculties, and administration that has passed through these hallowed halls. I want them to be like the administrators at Paw Paw High School in Michigan. They faced a similar situation, and they decided to not only keep their Redskin name, they also stated they will no longer address this issue at any time in the future. They will always be Redskins. I'm asking this board to do the same. Once a Redskin, always a Redskin. Thank you.
Michelle Thuman, and I understand she's speaking with Michelle Geiger.
And we're on a different topic. Can you hear me? Yeah. So my name is Michelle Geiger.
And my name is Michelle Thuman.
We both have several children in several different Forest Hill schools. We're here today because we'd like to be a part of a proactive, aggressive, and transparent process regarding the safety of our children while they are at school. We understand that there's a process in place through which students, parents, or anyone can report potential threats to our children, rumors, or concerns. Many of you are probably not aware that one of these potential threats happened on the last day of school at Nagel Middle School. Protocol was followed, the threat was investigated, and no credible evidence was found to support the threat. But for me personally, and for a number of us, it was a wake-up call, and I represent a group of people who felt that wake-up call that day. Since the recent Parkland, Florida tragedy, many school districts have recognized that relying on a reporting system like the one that was utilized during the recent incident at Nagel can only be a small part of the process of maximizing the safety of our children and minimizing the risk to them. Many school districts are taking a much more aggressive approach that involves several parts. We would like to be part of a process through which more safeguards could be put in place that deter those who might harm our children and demonstrate to our children that we are the adults who are responsible for their safety and that we're doing everything in our power to ensure that safety. For instance, I have a question for you. Do you know how many resource officers there are in our school district? The answer is 1. You are correct. 7,000 students, 1,000 staff members, 1 resource officer for the district. This must change. The last day of school at Nagel, as students...
Ms. Geiger, thank you. You've both filled out separate cards. You can't, you switch speakers and you've got another 2 minutes.
So we do, okay.
I mean, but not Ms. Geiger, Ms. Thuman.
Me, right? So
You
no
filled out
method,
separate cards.
so no method for deterring a person determined to harm others is foolproof, and every method will require money, time, and new logistical processes for students and parents. But these things are all things we can overcome and address. Losing even one of our precious children is something we cannot overcome. It is time for the Forest Hill School District to join other school districts in a proactive and aggressive process to ensure, to the best of our ability, the safety of our children while they are at school here in our own district, in each and every one of our schools. We would like other parents who are interested in being part of this process to let us know so we can all work together to address this very serious and urgent issue.
Thank you. Elizabeth Glenn. Elizabeth Glenn.
Good evening. Good evening. Having attended the final meeting of the branding committee, I, along with many others, was disappointed to realize that after several meetings and numerous speakers, the branding committee was unable to make a recommendation to the school board, as had been their charge. The school board, though, having the authority to make the final decision, I offer the following facts. The Intertribal Council of the 5 Civilized Tribes is an organization representing over 400,000 Indian people throughout the United States. The National Congress of American Indians represents 5.3 million tribal members. Both of these organizations have called for an end to the use of Indian mascots and logos. They cite a hostile learning environment, the appropriation and denigration of cultural identity. They have called it an offensive and disgusting practice that would be considered intolerable were other ethnic groups or minorities depicted in a similar manner. The Intertribal Council has aligned itself with the United States Commission on Civil Rights in condemning this practice. The National Congress of American Indians has specifically requested Forest Hills School District in February of this year to stop using the mascot logo. I have the documentation I'd like to leave with you if that's okay.
Dean Willis.
Good evening. My name is Dean Willis, a member of Anderson's class of 2003 and a 31-year resident of this township. I came here tonight because I wanted to address the committee's decision to retain the mascot. Now, I've already made my thoughts clear in an email I sent to Mr. Fruman, and I'm sure it's been shared with the board and the committee. But I came here tonight because I want to show this board that this issue is not going away. For the last 3 months, we worked very hard to get this mascot changed. Redskin, as we've all pointed out, is a deeply offensive term. And Mr. Fruman, as well as others, also pointed out that it makes this district look bad. Unfortunately, the concerns about cost were what won the day at the last meeting. But they shouldn't have won the day. True, we should be concerned about how we pay for anything in this district, but that shouldn't have been the deciding factor. While discussing an unrelated issue, a friend of mine said that when logic stands in the way of compassion and empathy, it stops being rational. Quibbling about dollars is equally irrational here because it prevented us from doing the right thing. Changing the mascot is the right thing to do. This is indisputable and incontrovertible. Money cannot negate morality or humanity. It only won this battle because of something Julie Bissinger said at the last meeting. While explaining her position on things, she noted that she wanted to vote for changing the mascot, but she didn't feel she could because the committee was not ready to change. And if the atrocious behavior we saw at that meeting is any indication, she was right. But this change is inevitable. It's going to happen. So I asked this board and this community the question that should have been asked at the last meeting: what do we need to do to be prepared for the day this happens? How do we get this community ready for the change? I think it starts with our children. For too long, our schools have failed to properly teach Native American history. I didn't know how badly misinformed I was until I started reading ethnic literature in college, and I'm rightfully ashamed of this fact. We must give our children the education we never got, but we must also lead by example. This entire debate is about right and wrong, and it should never have divided our community the way it did.
Thank you. Leanne Starks. And this is our last speaker this evening.
Good evening. While this has been a tough time for our community, I believe in Anderson Township more than ever now. We have great people who are passionate and care, and that is really something we should celebrate. We now have some very serious issues facing our district. Most immediately, I want to address what our board is about to talk about tonight, and that is the bus issue. While it is part of the plan to move them all along, I feel there's no reason to rush into a contract that has many unanswered questions. Things like the added fuel cost, 1% income tax for our bus drivers, traffic patterns in Newtown, maneuvering around the train tracks with an entire fleet of buses, potentially inflated value and purchase price of the property, and borrowing against borrowed money. We need to take a step back. I look at all the options. Maybe we just can't do this right now. Each and every one of you
at this table were put into your respective seats by all of the residents of Anderson Township. You have a responsibility to be transparent, honest, and fiscally responsible. Moving forward with this deal in Newtown is premature and goes against your duties as described on the board's website. I will take this time to remind you that the website bullet points, 2 of them are as follows: to engage the community members in decision-making about district and schools, and you're required to demonstrate financial accountability. It is not necessary to even look any further at this contract. Most of our community is not aware of what's ahead of us in this deal, and it shows complete disregard for the financial well-being of our district. Guys, the healing process starts with you. We're depending on you sitting at that table. It will be up to you to show everyone that we are as strong as ever. The healing process must start tonight. Please make the right decision for our district. The buses, our administrators, our teachers, and our students are depending on you. Thank you.
Items 9.1 and 9.2, if we can take those together, are our financial consultant agreement and the appointment of our new treasurer. Do we have a motion?
I make a motion to approve the financial consultant agreement with Elena Cooper effective July 1, 2018 through October 31st, 2018 as presented.
Second.
And let's do 9.2 as well.
Have them both. Okay.
Can we do that?
Have them both. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes? Okay.
Motion to approve the appointment of Elena Cropper as treasurer and approve contract as presented.
Second.
Before we take a vote on this, we went through an extensive process to locate Elena Cropper, actually somebody right here in Forest Hills, former treasurer in West Claremont. And we couldn't be more pleased with our selection of Elena, and she's here with us this evening. Elena, would you stand up and say hi to everyone? And we are equally excited to have you join us, Elena. Mr. Giuffre.
Ms. Choice.
Yes.
Mr. Smith.
Yes.
Mrs. Barber.
Yes.
And Mr. Fruman.
Yes. Thank you so very much, Elena. Welcome aboard. Item 9.3 is the appointment of a delegate and an alternate to the Ohio School Boards Association Annual Business Meeting on November 12th, 2018. Mr. Smith, would you have a motion?
I certainly would. I move to appoint Elizabeth Barber as delegate and Dee Dee Choice as an alternate to represent the district at the annual business meeting of the Ohio School Boards Association, which will be held on November 12th, 2018.
And a second?
Second.
I normally, it's been my privilege to serve in that position, but since I'm the state president and I will be presiding at that meeting, it's inappropriate for me, and actually I'm not allowed to hold that position. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Giuffre?
Mr. Smith.
Yes.
Mrs. Choice.
Yes.
Mrs. Barber.
Yes.
And Mr. Fruman.
Yes. And then 9.3.1, Ms. Choice?
Yes. I move that the Forest Hills Board of Education nominate Randy Smith to the OSBA, All Ohio Board of Education, as a representative or delegate.
No, just nominate.
A second.
Mr. Giuffre?
Ms. Choice.
Yes.
Mrs. Barber.
Yes.
Mr. Smith.
Abstain.
And Mr. Fruman.
Yes. Why don't you pass that down to Robbie? Item 9.4 is a resolution for the purchase of property. why don't we have a motion, then we'll have discussion.
I'll make a motion to approve the resolution for the purchase of real property as presented.
Second.
So I think many of you know that as part of the $103 million bond that was approved by our community, part of the promise that was that we would move the transportation and maintenance departments from the Anderson campus someplace else. And there was a reason for that. It's very congested, it's not particularly sightly, and there's a safety issues of having it there. And from the time that bond was approved and really until tonight, we have looked and looked and looked for property for that purpose. We've got kind of what we call a heat map, where we've looked at 14 different sites trying to come up with a solution to this problem, and it was a much bigger problem than any of us actually anticipated. Various properties were found unsuitable either because they simply weren't for sale, they were not cost effective, they had any number of other factors that just made them impossible. The last property we looked at, well, second to last property, was over on Mount Carmel. We actually had that property under contract, and then during due diligence, we ran into several problems. One, the community in and around that Mount Carmel property certainly didn't want buses in their neighborhood. We ran into the additional problem that we were going to have zoning issues. We never did make it to the zoning problem because before we even got there, our due diligence told us the property was simply cost prohibitive. Property acquisition cost is one of many factors we look into. You've got to build a maintenance facility, you've got to pave it in a way that can handle 80 buses day in and day out, electric use, utilities, lighting, fencing, the whole 9 yards, and Boatsmith became impossible. Our trustees offered to help us with a solution, and it was really great of them. They offered us some property down at Kellogg. They were going to give us the property free. But as I said, land acquisition cost is only one factor. The property had a lot of other things. We were going to have to tear down some property, build up some property. All the other infrastructure was required was going to actually take that property to something over $3 million, and it was in a flood zone. We did worry about the ability to insure the property, and even if we could insure it, insure the buses, should we ever have a flood, and flood in a floodplain seems eventually inevitable. We don't know whether we'd ever been able to renew the insurance there. So surprisingly, the property that we actually had first looked at became available to us, and it became available to us at a price within our budget. We have a contract, and this property's been under contract since May, but it's all been subject to board approval, and during the period from May until today, we've been pursuing our due diligence, and so we know what's going to cost. We know what's going to cost to get that property ready for our purposes. I think the final number was 2.7526. Is that right, Scott? Yes, he's shaking his head, and that's the total, not just the acquisition price. The contract price is actually $2,150,000, but I'm talking about the additional cost of having to pave, get the electric out there, and everything all in. And it's already got a garage facility out there, so it's within the budget, and it allows us to finally solve a problem which, frankly, is one of the biggest issues that has concerned me, because not only have we the continued congestion over there, but anybody in here that knows the Anderson campus knows that the parking problem over there is worse than it's ever been. This solves that problem. So we've got that contract ahead of us. I'm really excited about it. I'm glad it finally addresses a need that we've had. So anyone else care to have any comments on this, Randy?
At the Finance Committee meeting, Mr. Jufree was very patient and explaining to us some of the process for how this will work. And I'll tell you, school funding and school financing is a little bit different. It's not like a small business. It's not like your household finances. It's very different. But I appreciate you taking the time to explain some of the techniques that that we're going to be using to be able to acquire this property, to be able to preserve capital, as well as to do it at a cost-effective rate. The other thing I wanted to point out, you mentioned this is a property that we looked at initially, but initially it wasn't for sale, it was for rent. And as a practice, this board has tried to stay away from renting. We'd rather be an owner, because long-term, that's what's best in the best interest of the district. And by purchasing this property, it solves some of the problems that you laid out, but also it does it in a reasonably cost-effective way. And again, thinking long-term.
Ms. Barber?
Yeah. We have been talking about this at length. So my vote tonight is not going to be an easy one, because I really want to solve this problem as much as anyone else. But as I laid out in an email yesterday to Jim and Rob and Scott, not at all costs. And I have a couple concerns. First, I'm concerned with the way we're paying for it, which is with financing. That's an additional expense, which is above bond issue funds, and that's, to me, above the original bond promise. Second, we just, as of a few weeks ago, began discussions with the township and the parks about some collaborative ideas that just take time to play themselves out, and I'm not comfortable voting this through tonight. Third, we have done due diligence, and we have done the site work. I am still concerned about the physical location of this property in Newtown and the impact that it's going to have not only to our ongoing operations, but also to the town of Newtown. I don't think we've fully fleshed that out. So my fellow board members know this. I'm a question asker. I've been digging into numbers for months. So I felt like I needed to qualify that vote because it's a big decision.
One of the objections, I'm sorry, Dee Dee, were you?
No.
One of the concerns, rather, was about the Eastern Corridor. This came up a few days ago, and the fact that one of the plans for the Eastern Corridor went through that land. After speaking with the mayor and the vice mayor, and quite frankly, I've been attending the Eastern Corridor meetings for about 15 years, the decision at this point is not to move ahead with that, so it's really not a factor. Plus, I spoke with the mayor and the vice mayor of Newtown, and Newtown gets to exercise what's called home rule, which means, unlike the township, which they don't get that, so they can essentially veto a road going through Newtown, and Newtown's made it very clear that they don't want that going through there. So where there was concern for that, the good news is that's not really an issue. And I also, by the way, in speaking with the mayor and the vice mayor, they were supportive of this, and apparently they were aware of the potential concerns for traffic and some of the other issues, but they were, unless something's changed, last time I spoke with them, and one of them's my neighbor, so I think that they're supportive.
This property still has to go through a hearing, and they've done the traffic studies. They sat down with our transportation department. Our buses start before the heavy traffic in Newtown starts, and the buses are done before the heavy traffic in Newtown starts in the evening. So they've looked at those issues. They even looked at the train tracks and the time it takes the buses to stop and open their doors each and every time. So that has been vetted and is not deemed to be an issue. As far as the financing is concerned, the money is available. It is part of the initial bond issue. What we have done as a board, in order to be conservative, is because interest rates are still quite low, what we've decided to do is finance this through a private investor so that we're not using the funds that are presently available from the bond. so that we can make sure we finish all the construction. And then if and when the construction is finished and the money is still available because we didn't go over budget, then we can pay off the debt. But if in the other case, the costs go a little bit higher because of some unexpected circumstances, then we haven't put ourselves in a really difficult position. So I don't know yet whether it's additional money yet because we haven't gotten to that point. But it's the conservative and safer thing to do. We have a business advisory council, and we ran both the purchase and the financing through our business advisory council. Mr. Prebles did that with them, and they were in favor of this. So we do get input from outside the board. It's been vetted for quite some time. So again, and as far as the discussion with the township and the parks, I appreciate that partnership, and I know we'll continue to look at it. And we will continue to look at it, maybe a joint maintenance facility. That's still a possibility in the future. So unless there's other discussion, no, you may not. We have a board public commentary. This isn't time for it. Thank you.
Just one more piece that you might want to, we do still have contingencies in it.
We do.
So you might want to mention that too.
Yeah,
yeah.
Today, actually, if we approve this, starts our contingency period. We just have been ahead of the curve in doing our work since May. I think, what do we have, 90 days from whatever the contract says? I don't remember, but yeah, we've got plenty of time to continue to vet these issues. I just don't think we'll need them.
I think it's important to point out that this does not preclude us from doing a joint maintenance agreement with the township and the park board if we do move ahead with this, because I know that there was some discussion, and that might be an opportunity for us to work together if it makes sense for all of us. But that was important so that people didn't think that this was going to nullify our ability to work with them.
That's right. Mr. Giuffre?
Mrs. Barber?
No.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Ms. Joyce?
Yes.
Mr. Fruman?
Yes. Item 9.5 is board discussion. I think we've had a lot of board discussion, but if there's anything else anyone would like to address this evening? No? No? No, you may not. It does not matter. This is not, sir, this is not a public meeting. There is an opportunity for public commentary. If you're going to insist on talking, I'm going to have to ask you to be... Sir, this is not a public meeting. Item 10.1 is the... Officer? He should talk to the officer. We have a meeting that's going on. Item 10.1, business operations. Mr. Broadwater.
Thank you. Good evening. And I will ask Mrs. Tia Strauss, our food service supervisor, to come up. And item 10.1 is the certification of standards governing types of food and beverages sold on school premises. There is a presentation, and I know we all dislike when teachers read every single bullet on the presentation, but that's what I'm going to do because the Ohio Revised Code says we need to go through every item here. This is the annual report on the certification of standards governing types of foods and beverages sold on school premises. Bullet 1, as of July 2011, Ohio Revised Code 3313.814 requires each school district, Board of Education, and each chartered non-public school governing authority to adopt and enforce nutrition standards governing the types of food and beverages that may be sold on the premises of its school and specifying the time and place each type of food or beverage may be sold. Second bullet point, the standards specified in 3313.816 and 3313.817 are minimum standards and do not preclude the adoption of more stringent standards by the local educational agency. And third bullet, the Forest Hill School District is in complete compliance with Ohio Revised Code 3313.814. Next is the wellness policy compliance. All foods and beverages made available on school properties, including vending, concessions, a la carte, and student stores during the regular and extended school day will meet or exceed the district's nutritional standards, which are aligned with the Alliance for a Healthier Generation school beverage and competitive food guidelines. Second bullet, no foods or beverages other than those associated with the district's food service program are to be sold during school hours. Third bullet, foods and beverages unassociated with the food service program may be vended, sold in accordance with board policy. Next, we have the sale and consumption policy compliance. Prior to and during serving times, no food shall be sold to students at any location, including vending machines and school stores within the building other than the lunchroom sales operated by the food services department. All foods offered for sale during the school day will comply with the district's wellness policy and the district's nutritional standards. Fundraising food sales should encourage and support lifelong wellness practices. Last bullet is food sales to staff during the school day and to students at end of the regular and extended school day are at the discretion of each school's wellness committee, which each school has a wellness committee. Vending and school store policy compliance. No products are vended or sold which would conflict with or contradict information or procedures contained in the district's educational programs on health and nutrition, and all products vended or sold must be in compliance with the district's nutritional standards. Second bullet, no food or beverages are to be sold or distributed which will compete with the district's food service program, which may result in fiscal penalties to the district. And a little caveat I'll throw in there is our food service program is self-sufficient, which what that means is Mrs. Strauss, all of the income that she takes, that is what is used to run our food service program. So a little later you'll see that we'll have a bid for a walk-in freezer. That money is coming straight from her account. All right, so the food service is completely self-sufficient. Food service, okay.
Come on, Tia.
Prior to and during meal serving times, no foods or beverages, including products from vending machines and school stores, shall be sold to students at any location. The next slide is just for the board's information, which you do have a copy, but it is the nutritional standards for beverages. The little caveat at the bottom, at least 50% of beverages must be water and or no or low calorie beverages. The next chart is the nutritional standards for snack foods. As you read through that, the caveat at the bottom, cheese may be reduced fat or part skim in 1.5 ounce portions. 1 egg or egg equivalent with no added fat is permitted. Next slide is the new federal Smart Snacks policy. Our board policies are in compliance with both Senate Bill 210 and the Smart Snacks regulations. As with Senate Bill 201, the standards do not apply during non-school hours, on weekends, and at off-campus fundraising events. Also with the federal Smart Snacks, the law requires that ODE must set an upper limit on the number of food or beverage fundraisers that would be allowed on campus before, during school, and up to 30 minutes after the school day. If the state agency decides not to establish an upper limit, the state agency is electing to prohibit any exempt fundraisers from being held in schools. And the third bullet, the state agency may not delegate the authority to specify exempt fundraiser frequency to local educational agencies. And I've asked Mrs. Strauss to attend this evening so that she could be the expert in case our Board of Education had any questions.
Any questions, anyone?
And again, I will tell the Board of Education, our food service supervisor, Mrs. Strauss, is probably one of the best I've worked with. I know that she runs a very tight ship when it comes to making sure, A, our kids are taken care of nutritionally, and B, that she is able to do it in a fiscally sound way. So I say thank you to Mrs. Strauss.
Mr. Broadwater, you pointed out that, Tia, you run a organization that keeps it in the black. Just so people don't think that that's common, I don't think most school districts actually run in the black. So the fact that you run an operation where food service is self-liquidating in our district, Thank you very much. Congratulations.
We will move on to item 10.2, which is Waste Management Services Contract. The attached contract with Rumpke of Ohio Incorporated for waste management services shall become effective upon approval July 1st, 2018 through June 30th, 2019. The superintendent recommends the board approve the contract with Rumpke of Ohio Incorporated for waste management services effective July 1st, 2018 through June 30th, 2019 as shown in the attachments. Moving on to item 10.3 is a request to advertise for bid. This item is directly attached to the grant that Forest Hills received for the purchase of school buses. The grant basically pays for 50% of the purchase of up to 11 school buses, and this item is to request to advertise for bid for those buses. So the administration requests permission to authorize the treasurer to advertise for bids for the following project as specifications are completed. 1 up to 11 replacement school buses, and the treasurer recommends the board approve the request to authorize the treasurer to advertise for bids for the stated project. Next, item 10.4 is the approval of the amended lease with Moeller Knights of Columbus. What this lease is, it is the property right across from Turpin. We would call it the laydown property for the construction process that is going on. The good news is we don't need that property after December 31st of this year because they will be done with the construction, but we do have to amend it so that we can have it go until December 31st. So the administration is requesting the approval of the second amendment to the lease agreement with the Moeller Knights of Columbus. The lease will expire on June 30th, 2018. The amendment is to exercise the right to renew the lease on a month-by-month basis for up to 6 additional months ending December 31st, 2018 at 12 a.m. All remaining terms of the agreement will remain in full force and effect. The superintendent recommends the board approve the second amendment to the lease agreement with the Moeller Knights of Columbus as shown in the attachment. Moving on, we've got item 10.5, change orders for Anderson High School renovations. This is a motion to approve the change orders submitted by Travelers Bond and Specialty Insurance in the amount of $87,311 as presented. What I will do is go through some of the change orders. Basically, the change orders add up to that amount, which is the $87,000. Change order number 24 was for $34,865. I'll give you a couple of the larger ones. Again, this information is available if you would like it. But the largest one that we have is the bulletin for Queen City Plumbing, and it was for $11,835. This was the cost for plumbing to get Mrs. Horn's consumer science classroom done before the summer was ending, something that the district requested so that we could get our students in that classroom before or when school started. They had a lot of class requests, which is a great thing for Mrs. Horn, but then it did mean that we had to get that classroom finished. Demo and install door 201 and 201C was for $3,346. It was the door into the new mechanical room, which needed to be raised up 5 inches to account for floor elevation differences. Another item under change order 24 that was large was moving casework, was $7,329. This was moving casework out of the two new classrooms, the physics classroom, which is Mr. Rodriguez's, and Mr. Brandon's STEM classroom. The redesign, they had casework in there that we moved the casework to better facilitate other classrooms since the STEM classroom did not need it. So that was a part of that change order. Removing of the existing beam for the new walkway bridge was part of that change order for $2,421. That's kind of reviewing 4 of the larger pieces in that change order. Change order 25 was for $3,844. The 2 items there were to add a door frame in classroom 234 for right around $1,300. Drawings called for existing frame to remain, but when the opening was moved, we had to get a new frame. So that's what that cost was. Remove lines, cut and patch the floor for $2,500. Existing lines concealed in the wall were found in the old office area when demoed. The lines needed to be removed for new layout, and this was basically for the PA system at Anderson High School. Moving on, change order 26 was for $4,929. We had a request for information 93 was $2,053. The existing cafeteria roof deck was bowed, and the drop plates were needed to be added to the hydronic pipe supports. The hydronic pipes were run through the cafeteria. Electric and data move was $1,342, and this was to move the floor box power and data location in the new auxiliary gym to the other side where our athletic director, Mr. Newton, felt it would best work for our kids. Change order 27 was for $25,566. The largest one there was bulletin 21, which is technology. This was requested so that we could change the technology program to where every classroom is going to receive an overhead projector, a 43-inch TV, a Chromebox, as well as a teacher station where they can plug in and make sure that they can show the students what they need to in the classroom. And that was for the majority of change order 27. Change order 28 was $18,107. And a couple of the highlights there: change piping in the pool area. It was drawn to show painted sprinkler pipe to not be galvanized. We've requested to be galvanized since in the pool area it is subject to moisture. Wiring of the boiler room hot water heaters, right around $3,800. Power for the hot water heaters, it was not shown in the electrical drawings, so that was added. The air handler unit, which is mounted outside, needed the hood, the roof mounted outside air hood needed, was not shown on the mechanical drawings, so that was added for $4,800. So that concludes our Anderson. And with that, the superintendent recommends the board approve the change orders submitted by Travelers Bond and Specialty Insurance in the amount of $87,311. Next is...
Hold on,
sure.
Mike, before you move on, just because of some of the issues on voting, what we'd like to do is do consents 10.1 through 10.5 before we move on to 10.6. Can we have a motion on items 10.1 through 10.5?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Juf, we have discussion. I'd like to point out something, and I point this out at most of the meetings nowadays. As it sounds like we're just sitting up here listening to a bunch of numbers, we're not. These board meetings are where we affirm work, not where we do the work. The information on these change orders and everything that comes before the board is sent to us well in advance of the meeting, and we review it, and we spend a lot of time reviewing it and asking questions. We've already seen the detail on these change orders, and we send emails and we get responses to these emails, and sometimes things get pulled from the agenda because they're not to our satisfaction. For example, the waste management contract that we voted and approved this evening was actually something that was on the May agenda. There were issues with the contract that were not to our liking, and it was pulled from the agenda so that Mr. Broadwater could go back and renegotiate some of those terms. Similarly, there was another contract that was on the agenda for this evening that wasn't to our satisfaction, and that was pulled from the agenda, and presumably that'll get cleaned up in a way that is to our satisfaction for the July meeting. So unless you think we're sitting up here not paying attention, we've already heard all this, we've already vetted all this. That's why it's easier for us to act on it. So with that, Mr. Giuffre, items 10.1 to 10.5.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I'm not following you. Right. Ms. Joyce?
Yes.
Mrs. Barber?
Yes.
And Mr. Fruman?
Yes. All right, and then item 10.6, please.
Okay. And as I move on to that, I will vouch that the Board of Education asks a lot of questions as we send them the information, and we're happy to give them. It's always nice to have a check and balance with everything there. 10.6 is change order for the Anderson High School site. That is a site package, which is part of the transportation, but basically it's the asphalting and getting everything prepared there. The motion is to approve the change order submitted by Performance Construction in the amount of $73,141 as presented. This was the milling and resurfacing of the bus area parking lot and we added an additional 6 inches topping to the existing lot. In that is one of the items that is the largest item for that. The superintendent recommends the board approve the change order submitted by Performance Construction in the amount of $73,141 as presented.
We're going to do that one right now, too. Do we have a motion on 10.6?
I make a motion to approve the change order submitted by Performance Construction in the amount of $73,141 as presented.
Second.
Mr. Giuffre?
Ms. Choice?
Yes.
Mrs. Barber?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
And Mr. Fruman?
Abstain. And that's because my law firm does work for Performance Construction. I've abstained on every vote that has come before us with respect to Performance Construction. Items 10.7 through 15 will be by consent then, is that right?
Except for 15.1.
Except for 15.1.
And I'll do that when we get there.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Broadwater.
10.7, change order for Maddox Elementary. This is a motion to approve the change order submitted by Seaforth Building Company in the amount of $2,043. This was for 48 toilet bowl swaps. That is what that change order is for, and we're thinking that Maddox was a tremendous construction project. We are pretty much to the end of the change orders, if not that being the last one. So the superintendent recommends the board approve the change order submitted by Seaforth Building Company in the amount of $2,043. 10.8, change orders for Mercer Elementary. The change orders are result in scope, and the motion is to approve the change order submitted by Mark Spalding Construction in the amount of $53,628. Those two change orders, change order 41 was for art room rail drainage, which is right outside the art room at Mercer Elementary. That was for $23,324. When digging for the ramp to the new art room door and underground conduit bank, fiber line and water line were discovered. These lines would not allow for the new ramp grade work to be completed properly. The change was to install a new area well with stairs out. So that's an example of kind of an unforeseen condition as we went through it. Change order 42, $30,304. It is the main entry change. The existing wing walls at the front entry were not constructed as indicated on the existing drawings provided. Modifications were needed to be made to the existing walls to properly support the new entry steel. Changes were removing the existing brick veneer and installing new CMU walls. And again, this was an unforeseen condition for $30,304. So the superintendent recommends the board approve the change orders submitted by Mark Spalding Construction, excuse me, in the amount of $53,628. Moving on to 10.9, this is a change order for Wilson Elementary demolition package. There was an existing buried foundation that was discovered that needed to be removed. So again, that was unforeseen. That was for $2,743. The superintendent recommends the board approve the change order submitted by Logan Creek LLC in the amount of $2,743 as presented. 10.10 is a bid opening for the Turpin High School walk-in freezer replacement that we just mentioned with Mrs. Strauss. It is funded through the food service fund, and the superintendent recommends the board approve the resolution to award the contract to C&T Design and Equipment Company Incorporated, who was the lowest bidder as shown in the attachment. Item 10.11 was the bid opening for Summit Sherwood Maddox Elementary School's partial roof replacements this summer. Bids were open and read on Tuesday, June 19th for the Summit Sherwood Maddox Elementary School's partial roof replacements. The complete bid tabulation and recommendation are shown in the attachment the board has in front of them. The superintendent recommends the board approve the resolution to award the contract to TrueCraft, the low bidder as shown in the attachment. And last but not least, we have 10.12 is the facilities update. And I've abbreviated since I knew we had some lengthy items here, but I think it's important we take a look at some of the progress that we've made. So I'm going to start with Anderson High School. And I don't know if you can see these. There we go. For the Anderson High School, the top picture is the view from Forest Road. You can see the classrooms right past the office as you go towards the baseball field. The window, the store, what they call the storefront, has been taken out, and they are working on that as we go through the summer. They've got all the demo done. The bottom picture is looking out the other way, where you can see the dumpsters that are in the top picture. That is what one of the classrooms looks like. I think that might be Mrs. Lee's math classroom. But as the demo goes out, if you were to walk through today, all of the items that look like they're trash are gone. It's all cleaned up, and we're ready to move forward on the classrooms. This is the science classrooms. The science classrooms, if you were aware, the flooring was not put down this year for the students. The flooring is now down in our science wing, and they've moved on to the art wing as they go through it. But you can see that our new science classrooms with the new furniture look pretty good. The floors are in, and we're moving on. This is an exciting picture for me. This is the weight room that is in the multi-purpose building, which is on the lower level. This is the glass frame, has finally been put in. You're looking out the weight room through to Charles Brown Stadium, and the storefront is in, so the multi-purpose building is moving along. Next, for Turpin, a little tough to see, I guess, but the top picture is the Learning Commons. At Turpin, the Learning Commons is going to be complete this summer. Anderson, it's going to be next summer, but the Learning Commons, there's quite a bit of renovation to be done in there. They are creating some classrooms on the side there, and I will tell you that Monarch Construction is moving right along. It's going very, very well. Next is the cafeteria at Turpin. What they're basically doing inside the cafeteria is running pipe work for the HVAC system and electrical, and that is a picture of what they've got going on there. And this is what they're currently framing out. They finished the English section early, so they moved on to social studies. This is the social studies wing. If you remember going through the social studies wing, you did not see all the bright and the nice windows in there. So they've got windows cut in. They've got everything framed up, ready to go. And I would say at Turpin, the next piece that's going to be demoed is upstairs, which is the math classrooms, and they have pretty much got those demoed, so they're moving right along. The last slide I have up there is the one that we like to provide every month, which is the financial status of the project. And when you look at the spreadsheet, I've got June up there as well as May. As we go through it, thank you, Mr. Monk. As you look at it, you can see the top one is June. I'll just concentrate on that since it's kind of tough to see. But the yellow column, which is the difference, shows you, I highlighted it yellow because those are the items that have changed from May. As you go through it, you can see that Anderson High School, for example, we have $8,534,842 left, simply because we've got a lot left at Anderson to do. If you look down through the elementaries, we're pretty much done. Summit Elementary, we may have one more change order coming across, but for the elementaries, we're pretty much complete with all of the funding. You can see that Turpin, for Turpin, we have $2,803,642 left. And with Turpin, after this summer, all we have left are about, I think, 9 math classrooms up top, 8 or 9 math classrooms up top there, so we're in good shape. And looking at the transportation, we are at $2 million, I believe that's $952,000, right around there. So the purchase for the new transportation center is part of the budget. All told, right now, we have a total of about $13.5 million left to spend with the bond. And after this summer, I can tell you that things should slow down for us. We got Turpin will be pretty much done, except for one wing. And then Anderson, what we have left is the Performing Arts wing, which we will go through next school year and next summer finishing that up. And we will be all set. So with that ends my report. Any questions that you may have?
I have a correction. You said Anderson science rooms look pretty good. Mr. Fellows gave me a tour about a week ago. They look great.
They look awesome.
As somebody who took biology, chemistry, and physics in those rooms that look the same way they did about 6 months ago as they did in 1972, you walk in there now, if you didn't know you were in Anderson High School, it's state-of-the-art. And I think it was a makerspace area. That probably is state-of-the-art for a high school. So it's really exciting to see this come together. Thank you. Oh, and one other comment. Security's been mentioned. All 9 of our buildings now have approved security entrances, which I guess none of them did 5 years ago. And I don't know how much money we spent on that, but obviously it is absolutely well worth it. But that's something that we probably didn't talk about much, but the fact that we now have these approved security entrances for all 9 buildings, that's an accomplishment and a step in the right direction when it comes to concern over safety and security.
Cameras were also part of the project as well. So.
Anyone else? Thank you, Mr. Broadwater.
Thank you.
Curriculum, Ms. Lawson.
Item 11.1, books for the World War II Social Studies course for grades 10 through 12. These books have been on review in the curriculum department since the May 21st, 2018 Board of Education meeting. The Flower, on the possibilities and limits of forgiveness. Inferno, The World at War, 1939 to 1945. All the Light We Cannot See. The superintendent recommends the board approve these titles listed for the World War II Social Studies course. 11.2, textbook adoption for health, grades 9 through 12. Prior to requesting approval for the following book, Adoption for Health, grades 9 through 12, it is being presented to the Board of Education. Glencoe Health, publisher McGraw-Hill Education, grade level 9 through 12 course, Health. This course will be this textbook will be available for review in the curriculum department until the July 23rd, 2018 Board of Education meeting. Item 11.3, St. Joseph Orphanage Service Agreement, 2018 to 2019 school year. The superintendent recommends the board approve the July 1st, 2018 service agreement between St. Joseph Orphanage and the Forest Hills School District for the 18-19 school year as shown in the attachment. This contract is the same as last year. And finally, item 11.4, school fees for early childhood, elementary, middle, and high schools for the 18-19 school year. The superintendent recommends the board approve the attached school fees for early childhood, elementary, middle, and high schools for the 18-19 school year.
Thank you. Any questions for Ms. Lawson? Thank you very much. Human Resources, Ms. Carnahan.
As Mr. Broadwater read the entire report to you earlier, I'm going to read all 28 pages of the entire report tonight. Is that okay? Item A, resignations. The following have resigned their contracts as effective as listed. Item B, a reduction in force due to lack of work. Item C, which just oversees a number of other items. Item D, a change in contract days. Item E, we do have appointments for the 17-18 school year. Item F, special service appointments for the 2017-18 year, so continuing with this, pages 3 through 5. Item G, appointment of an advisor for the 17-18 year, actually a coach. Item H, volunteers. Item I, you'll find the organizational chart as attached. Item J, 3 job descriptions. Item K, an exempt salary schedule update. Item L, an update of the supplemental salary schedule. Item M, change of assignment. Item N, change in contract days. O, change in salary. Item P, appointments, and this is on pages 8 through 9. And I would like to welcome this evening a new administrator in our district based upon your approval this evening. Adam Boyer will be joining us as of August 1st at Turpin High School as our Assistant Athletic Director. So welcome to you, Adam. Certified staff, you'll see a number of certified staff on pages 8 and 9. We do, however, have one of our new certified staff members with us this evening, Scott Rother, and Scott is coming to join us at Wilson Elementary as our music teacher. So welcome, Scott. Item Q at the bottom of page 9 would be a change of assignment for the 18-19 year. Item R, special services appointment. Item S, reappointment of personnel, and this is a correction from last month. Item T, and this is the bulk of the HR report tonight from pages 11 through pages 27. And I know I say this often, but if you look through this list, you see all of the people who support our students in extracurricular and co-curricular activities, whether it's at our elementaries, whether it's our middle or high school. And, you know, we just, many of them are staff members, but many are also community members. So we thank everyone who provides that extra service to our students. Item U, student teachers for the 18-19 year. Item V, substitute personnel for 18-19. And since the board meeting in May, staffing has remained the same at 806.32. And you can see the FTE worksheet at the on the screen. And I just wanted to very briefly talk to you about the last column, the staffing summary column for the 17-18 school year. And you can see that we did make some FTE additions in the custodial, in our custodial classification, and this is due to the square footage. This was anticipated when we made, renovations and new construction. Transportation 1.12, this is due to change in routing where students live and so forth. Other support would be an instructional aid that was paid for through a federal grant. And item, paraprofessional, one addition, and this was a student who moved in partway through the year that had some very high needs, and we just needed to make sure there was an adult there with that student to help provide for their safety and the safety of others. So we had an addition of 5.59 FTE this year. As a reminder to the board, we will not have regular FTE reports until school resumes, and then we will give you a reconciliation of what has occurred between the 17-18 school year and the 18-19 school year. The superintendent recommends the HR report as presented.
Thank you.
Mr. Fruman?
Yes, sir.
If I may, in regard to HR, I did want to point out that Natasha Adams, Megan Lawson, and Eric Fry are part of the report. Eric was is the athletic director at Turpin, Megan, associate director of secondary education, and Natasha, who is the director of teaching and learning, all have gone to new positions, and we want to wish them good luck and certainly thank them for their services in the district. They have done excellent work, and we are so proud of them and are happy that they have some opportunities in other places. We're sad that you're leaving, but we certainly want to thank you for your efforts and for all the things that you have done to make this school district the hallmark school district that it is. So thank each of you for your work in the school district. The other thing that I would like to do as part of Tammy's report is congratulate Mr. Bob Buck, who was formerly the Wilson Elementary principal, who is now going to be moving to the Associate Director of Elementary Education. Bob is in the back of the room. We'd like to congratulate you, sir, for taking on the new role. And Anita Eshelman is with us. Anita's in the back wearing black this evening, and she is going to be the new principal of Nagel Middle School. So we'd like to congratulate Anita as well. Wish both of you the best of luck. They've been in the district for several years, each of them. They have certainly contributed to our success, and we're happy that they're moving on to new positions and taking on new roles of leadership. So thank you both, and best wishes. And again, to Natasha, Megan, and Eric, we wish you the best. Thank you very much for your efforts.
Thank you. Are we approving the org chart?
It's in there.
Okay. Student services. Mr. Prebles, you're going to present that?
Yes. If you just give me 1 second, I lost my place. Okay, the motion is to approve the enrollment of a student, Nora Braun, at Turpin High School as presented. The administration of Turpin High School requests board approval of the following foreign exchange student for the school year of 2018-19. Nora Braun is from Australia, will be a student at Turpin High School. A host family has been selected for her. She will be sponsored by Youth for Understanding USA. And all the information required for Nora and this placement is outlined in the board, as outlined in board policy 5114 has been received for this student. So I recommend the board approve the enrollment of student Nora Braun at Turpin High School, and that the board authorize the waiver of instructional and school fees for Nora.
And item technology, Mr. Broadwater, item 14.1.
Item 14.1 in technology, Mrs. Carnahan, I'll be reading this entire report. 14.1 technology, Hamilton County Cooperative, which is HCC contract for services 2018 and 2019. HCC provides fiscal services such as USAS and PowerTerm, Student Information System, which is Dazzle, Gradebook, which is Progress Book, Special Services, SPS, Gifted, which is IEP Anywhere, EMA support, and archiving. The fees for larger districts for 2018-19 are capped at $125,000. HCC continues to archive our pre-Google emails at no cost to Forest Hills. The superintendent recommends to the board to approve the HCC annual contract for services for the period July 1st, 2018 to June 30th, 2019 as shown in the attachment.
Thank you. We want to move on 10.7 to 14.1 now, Rob?
We can do consent after I've read my report and just omit 15.1, act on it.
Okay.
Is that all right?
Yes.
So I'll go forward now.
Sure.
15.1 is Mr. Fruman explained earlier that's authorizing resolution for $2 million for private placement is a cash flow strategy. Because of the district's tax exempt status and because of our excellent credit rating, we're able to borrow in the low 3% range. And with that, in a rising interest rate environment, we are able to invest and currently are invested, and we want to stay invested. And as rates come up, then issuance cost and borrowing costs should be fairly mitigated. So with that, I make a recommendation to empower to approve the authorizing resolution for the purposes of property financing. There's a lot of whereases and therefores, but I will not read them.
We got it. We've reviewed them.
Thank you.
Consent, continue.
Need a motion?
Yeah.
Okay. We need a motion on 10.7 through 15.1.
I was going to do 15.1 and finish and then go back. No?
You want to do 15.1 on its own. I'm with you. Okay, can we have a motion on 15.1?
Sure.
Sure.
I make a motion that we approve the resolution authorizing lease purchase financing for the purpose of financing the acquisition of real property as presented.
Second.
All right, Mr. Giuffre?
Ms. Choice?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mrs. Barber?
No.
And Mr. Fruman?
Yes.
And moving on to 15.2, Treasurer's Report. Starting with donations, we have donations of $33,416.48, of which $15,000 of that is a flow-through grant from Duke Energy through our Foundation for Education to our classrooms for Project Lead the Way. That's item A. Item B, Statement of Board Accounts, and items C, D, and E are budgetary reflections of our receipts and expenditures. Item F is our monthly bank reconciliation. Item G, investment portfolio. Item H is our final appropriation ending the fiscal 18 budget and fiscal year. Item I is a $2 million advance for the purpose of purchasing the bus compound, which will be returned to the general fund upon the private placement funding. Item J is a transfer from the general fund to food service for $1,571.30, covering unpaid fees as required by federal guidelines, and again underscoring what an extraordinary job Tia Strauss does with our food service program. Item K is requesting approval to pay expenses for board service fund. Item L establishes the FY19 temporary appropriations at 50% of the FY18 final appropriations and allows for federal and state grants to be fully appropriated. Item M is to reset the federally approved mileage reimbursement rate to 54.5 cents per mile. And then item N is to establish the board service fund for fiscal year 2019 at $14,000 to pay expenses incurred for the performance of the board's duties, including workshops, seminars, and meetings on behalf of the district. And with that, I'd like to make a recommendation to approve by consent items 10.7 through 15.2, omitting 15.1 for approval.
We have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve action items 10.2 through 15.2, less 10.6 and 15.1 as presented. Did I miss any?
Is that right?
What's that?
Is that right?
10.7 through
10.7.
Because we did
Okay.
10.1 or 2.2 to 10.5. Easy for me to say. Do I have a I don't hear a second yet.
That's because I was trying to clarify the motion.
Thank
Right,
you.
we got the motion clarified?
Got it.
All right, do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you.
Mr. Giuffre?
Mrs. Barber,
Yes.
Ms. Joyce,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
and Mr. Fruman.
Yes.
Mr. Fruman, may I make a quick comment? I know it's late, but I want to make a quick one anyway. Mrs. Barber, it may be too modest to mention this, but that $15,000 donation that came from Duke Energy came as a result of, understand, a conversation you had with somebody at a Reds game talking about the great things that were happening in the Forest Hill School District. Elizabeth, is that correct?
It is.
And so what I would encourage everybody here is, we know we've got enthusiastic supporters of the district. There's a lot of great people that are working for the foundation. Talk up the Forest Hill School District. You never know when something like that may come up. So Elizabeth, thank you.
I didn't know that.
You're welcome.
Good
No,
job.
it was very random.
Whatever, that's 15,000, thank
Right.
you.
I know.
All right, reports to the Board of Education. 16.1 Business Advisory Council report. Mr. Prebles?
They did not meet. We will meet again later this summer.
16.2 Policy Committee.
Yes, the Policy Committee met on May 2nd. We reviewed some changes to policy on the College Credit Plus program. Actually, this was something I guess the legislature enabled because what it does is it allows us to tighten up some of the requirements for the College Credit Plus program. So this is actually a good thing. We had a first reading at the last meeting, so this is our second reading. And are we in consent at this point, or we need an actual motion?
I think an actual motion.
Okay. Let's see, I move that we adopt the revisions to the policy 2271 as presented.
Second.
Mr. Giuffre?
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mrs. Barber,
Yes.
Ms. Choice,
Yes.
and Mr. Fruman.
Yes. All right, item 16.3 is the HR Committee report. We've not met. Item 16.4 is the Finance Committee report. Mr. Smith?
Yeah, Finance Committee met June 22nd. Dr. Heiss was there, Mr. Giuffre, our new treasurer, Mrs. Cropper, was there. Superintendent Prebles was there, and I attended. We reviewed update to the year-to-date financial condition, the 5-year forecast, facilities renovation budget update, review of the private placement for bus purchase, and I greatly appreciate Mr. Giuffre's patience in explaining that. Review of the transportation facility financing, and we also talked about the transition of treasurer role from Mr. Giuffre to Mrs. Cropper. And we have got two very experienced, highly motivated treasurers, so I'm confident with the plan you guys have put in place that we'll have a very smooth transition. One of the key observations is we reviewed the year-end financials, and the good news is this year looks like it'll end up as projected with no surprises. We'll see a new 5-year forecast, I guess, in September or October. The operating levy from March 2012 was expected to last 3 years through 14, 15, and 16, and even though funding from the state has been virtually flat, the district has stretched out the 2012 operating levy to last at least 6 years. But this is something I wanted to point out. There was a comment about our cash balance by a speaker earlier. School funding is very different than a small business or your personal finances. The way the state of Ohio has it set up, and thanks to something called House Bill 920, school districts have to plan to take in more money than they need. Let's say you've got a 3-year cycle. You take in a lot more than you need the first year. You have roughly even spending the second year, and you have deficit spending the last year. Well, that's why we are sitting on a cash balance, because we're getting towards the end of our levy cycle. Matter of fact, instead of 3 years, like I said, we've made this one stretch out to 6 years. But there is an expectation you will have deficit spending in your final year. Which leads me to the point that when we were reviewing our numbers, there is no question we're going to need to go out for a levy in probably May of 2019. It will certainly be in 2019. I guess the only question is when. But again, it's the way the state has set up funding in the state. And this school district is pretty conservative. Matter of fact, I think we have one of the lowest costs per student of any highly rated school district in the state. And that is because, well, it's because we've got great faculty and staff, but it's also we've got some very conservative fiscal policies. But nevertheless, as we went through the numbers over an hour and a half, there's no question that we're going to have to go out for a levy in 2019. Our meeting adjourned at 12:30, and I greatly appreciate the participation of all the people on the Finance Committee.
Thank you. Item 16.5 is the Teaching and Learning Committee. We've not met. Item 16.6, the Safety Committee report. Ms. Barber?
Yes, we have not met again, but I'll just let everyone know we have that big community-wide safety drill coming up on Wednesday. John's in the back. This is a big deal. This is a chance for everybody to work together and see how our systems work, things that need to be fixed, but things that are also really good. So John's worked really hard on that. On the internal safety side, the preventative safety side, John and Scott and I have been in communications for probably once a week about this stuff. He has them doing some research. Scott has John doing some research on preventative safety measures that we should have as a board ready to review by August. So that is moving forward. I know a lot of the community is asking questions about that. And it's active, it's just that stuff takes time to research. You can't just implement that right away. It takes money, it takes resources, so it's moving along at a satisfactory pace.
Yeah, I actually really appreciate the additional time you're putting into this, Elizabeth. You and I have talked offline, and we've done a lot, but it's a changing world, and nothing's good enough.
Well, it drives it home when my 2 kids are at AIR and I walk in the door, and it's just really real to me. So and we do it well, but we can do more, so it's good.
16.7, the Forest Hills Foundation. Ms. Stone.
Good evening. Now, is this working or not working? Yes. Okay, it is. The Forest Hills Foundation Board met on June 13th. Unfortunately or fortunately, I was not there. I was on vacation, but apparently the meeting went ahead without me. The board did agree to hire Beth Davis as a part-time temporary employee to be the foundation's community partner coordinator, to work closely with the district's part-time community partner coordinator, so that we can go out and meet with local businesses, find out how we can work with them to create opportunities for our students, mentorships, internships, create the protocols and systems to put in place to make that happen. So that is done. So Donna, you have a new cohort. Our board retreat was June 9th. We had 15 board members and 15 community members attend that, and it was a great session. We got out to a beautiful cabin in Williamsburg, and it was just a wonderful day, a great input. We had students participate, which was awesome. Their participation, they had some great ideas, and the excitement was great, and some staff and faculty also. And so we're working on our strategic plan, and so we'll be doing more work on that in the months to come to get that finished. And we have a couple events coming up. Our golf outing will be July 20th. It's a Friday. It's a legendary run. It's only a 9-hole this year. We'd love for you all to participate. It's online. It's on our website, which is fhfe.org. And also our Soiree for Success will be September 29th. That's our big gala event. That'll be at the Anderson Center this year, and online invitation should be going out about that in about the next couple weeks. So we hope you all attend that too. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks for coming and staying. 16.8, legislative liaison. Randy?
Okay, legislative update. The Ohio House passed several bills, sending them to the Senate for consideration. I want to highlight just a couple of them. 342, which requires that ballot wording on property tax proposals be in terms of tax per 100,000 of fair market value rather than $100 of tax valuation. The bill passed 61 to 32. That could tend to be confusing for voters, but we'll see how that goes. House Bill 58, which requires State Board of Education to adopt a model curriculum for cursive handwriting instruction for students in grades kindergarten through 5. Bill passed 89 to 4, so that may impact us. Let's see, Senate Bill 246, sponsored by Peggy Lehner. The bill deals with positive behavior intervention supports and suspension and expulsion policies for students in grades pre-K through 3. Let's see, House Bill 680. The bill requires school buses to be equipped with occupant restraining devices. Now, I would interpret that as seatbelts, and designates the third week in October to Safety School Week. The committee also concluded a fourth hearing on Senate Bill 216, which would enact the Ohio Public School Deregulation Act, dealing with the administration of primary and secondary education programs. The committee expects to accept amendments and vote on the bill at its next hearing. That is a comprehensive bill that actually, for once, I think is good for school districts. I think, was that something that the Alliance supported, your group? So there's a lot into this bill, but my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, there's a lot of good things in that for school districts.
Yes.
The State Board of Education Report Card Committee completed 4 months of work. They will recommend a long list of changes to the state report card, including a recommendation that the report card use indicators other than letter grades, which were perceived to be misleading. I'm fairly familiar with that work because I sit on that committee. So hopefully something good will come out of that. That's my report.
Thank you. 16.9 is the Forest Hills Teachers Association report. Ah, there we go. You were hiding in plain sight. Ms. Lawver?
First of all, I want to say good evening, and as always, being one of the last people to speak, but tonight in particular, I just want to make sure I took a couple extra minutes. I was thinking a little bit throughout this evening as well as during the last several weeks that during the past several years, our community made the major decision, and the board obviously took on this major workload of transforming our school. And that was the word that we placed when we put the bond out, was transformation. And today, as I look at the schools and I'm looking at the people that are still here this evening and the people that come and our teachers and the kids, we're looking towards transition now. And there is some closure and the light's coming, you know, like we're seeing beautiful things happen. And I know I talked to Mr. Fellows today that I've made it a point every Sunday after church, I go to Anderson High School and take a look, and I take a chance throughout the week to try to make sure I hit the buildings. And I looked at my closet in my classroom from church the other day because the wall's torn down from the outside, and I keep thinking, are we there yet? Are we there for our kids? Are we getting there? And then you step into the elementary buildings and we're seeing the furniture and we're seeing that. With that responsibility, though, that the community has given to us is also the responsibility of our teachers and our administration to work collectively and together to transition our students into a bigger and better place for learning. And all the beautiful facilities and everything that's there will never replace what I know was happening way before those classrooms were redone, and that is great teaching. And that's where the magic happens. So I want to make sure I tell the board tonight that I've had lots of things. I know Ms. Carnahan's in here and Mr. Broadwater, and we've been here a long time watching some of these, the boxes, the dirt, the sweeping, the crying, the people working extra long hours, and from the board being there, but our staff and our administration, the teams and our parents have been very consistent in working together. And I want to make sure as we go towards these finishing areas and places, keep our heads up, we're moving in the right direction.
and I want to make sure I say thank you for that, but I also want to make sure that the board knows our staff is tough. They've been handling it very well. And there's not always good things, but there's lots of days now I'm seeing that transition is starting to happen. Also during this time, just as we come to the closure of school, from the Teachers Association, my goal is to make sure that staff is taking that time to rejuvenate themselves and get themselves ready. And I ran into several today and talked to many people, and one of the biggest things there is spending that time to read, that time to relax, and that time to prep themselves for a new school year. And with that, from the association, and it's also to help us get organized and make sure that we are starting our school year in a way that's professional but also collaborative. For me this evening, the most important thing that I have to gain is, I know I'm listening to Randy with your legislative, and there's lots of changes ahead. I think there's several different ones. Forest Hill school teachers are not required to join our teachers association. It is a privilege in my book that we have a great collaborative force. And historically speaking, we have been in Forest Hill School District for 50 years this year. I didn't know it was that much until I did some homework and came through it. And that's 50 years of working collectively. And the history there is strong, and I hope to continue that. And this summer, one of my goals is to make sure I do that by providing additional support and training and leadership for the teachers and the staff within our school district, as well as working with our curriculum department as we transition with new people and new members to prepare our teachers for greater roles in next year. Any questions?
No, but one, thank you for being here late. And two, thank you. We do know the staff and the teachers are tough. I mean, we recognize what they've had to work through, and we really, truly appreciate it.
But I want to make sure that I say that too. As tonight, you know, when we have evenings and different times, it's important for the board to know that, you know, from our end as the association, as me as the president in particular, I'm always there to make sure I support what the board has asked of us, and I think our teachers have done a great job, but it takes all of us working together. So thank you, Jim.
Thank you. Item 17.1, executive session.
Pursuant to Ohio Revised Code, Section 121.22G1, I hereby move that the board adjourn to executive session for the purpose of considering the appointment, employment, dismissal, discipline, promotion, demotion, compensation of a public official, employee or official, and pursuant to Revised Code 121.22G2, I hereby move that the board adjourn to executive session for the purpose of considering purchase of property for public purpose, and 3, pursuant to Ohio Revised Code, Section 121.22G3, I hereby move that the board adjourn to executive session to meet with the board legal counsel to discuss disputes involving the board and/or district that are the subject of pending or imminent court action.
Thank you. Our next regular meeting is July 10th, 2018. That's at 7 a.m., right? Mm-hmm. The July 10th meeting. There's also another regular meeting on, is it July 25th? The HR meeting is July 10th at 7 a.m. in the morning, and then the next regularly scheduled is July 23.
The Ohio Revised Code in the state of Ohio requires that for a school district to be protected and for staff members to be protected, if there's movement, people going from one district to another, July 10th is sort of the date that school districts are not compelled to let someone go because staffing is arranged for the upcoming school year. So when we have a special board meeting on July 10th, the purpose of that is to ensure that our school district is protected and that those who have other opportunities can go to those other opportunities. So the 7 a.m. meeting is really about operational things with staffing for the upcoming school year. It does not replace an official board meeting that typically happens.
Right, which is why I was trying to come up with what the meeting was after that. The 23rd, July 23rd at 7 p.m. Okay, thank you. We don't expect to take action after executive session. We thank everybody for coming this evening. Good night. The executive session. Thank you.
I'll be the second.
Mr. Giuffre?
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Ms. Barber?
Yes.
Ms. Choice?
Yes.
Mr. Fruman?
Yes.
And who will be coming in with us?
Who's coming in with us?
Alana?